Listen carefully. Arthur Schopenhauer observed that the problem with being smart is that everyone else seems so incredibly stupid, but this statement reveals something far more profound than intellectual arrogance. It exposes the fundamental tragedy of human consciousness. If you've ever felt frustrated by the gap between your understanding and others, if you've wondered why intelligence often feels more like a curse than a blessing, today you'll discover why Schopenhauer considered intellect both humanity's greatest achievement and its heaviest burden. If you're ready to understand why being smart creates unique psychological and social challenges, and how to transform this understanding into wisdom, leave a clarity in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications for more deep philosophical insights that will change how you see your own mind. The problem with being smart isn't what most people think it is. Society tells us that intelligence is purely advantageous, that smart people have easier lives, better opportunities, clearer paths to success. But Schopenhauer understood something that escapes this simplistic view. Intelligence fundamentally alters your relationship with reality in ways that create as many problems as they solve. The more clearly you see, the more you become aware of what others cannot or will not see. And this awareness becomes a source of perpetual frustration, isolation, and existential burden. Consider your own experience. How many times have you seen an obvious solution that everyone else misses? How often have you predicted outcomes that seemed inevitable to you but surprised everyone else? How frequently have you found yourself explaining concepts that feel elementary to you but appear impossibly complex to others? This isn't coincidence. This is the natural consequence of possessing intellectual capacity that exceeds the norm. And each instance creates a small but significant separation between you and the rest of humanity. Schopenhauer recognized that intelligence operates like a double-edged sword. On one side, it provides the capacity for deep understanding, creative problem-solving, and meaningful insight into the nature of existence. On the other side, it creates expectations that the world cannot meet, reveals truths that others find disturbing, and generates a form of consciousness that is inherently lonely. The smart person lives in a reality that is simultaneously richer and more burdensome than the reality inhabited by others. The philosopher understood that most human suffering stems from the conflict between our desires and reality. But for intelligent people, this conflict is amplified by their ability to see clearly what others miss. They can perceive the logical consequences of current actions, the underlying patterns that govern social behavior, the fundamental contradictions in popular beliefs. This clarity becomes a source of chronic frustration because they must live among people who cannot or will not acknowledge these obvious truths. Think about how this manifests in daily life. You're in a meeting where everyone is excited about a strategy that you can immediately see will fail. You know exactly why it will fail. You can predict the specific ways it will go wrong, but when you try to explain this, you're met with blank stares or accusations of being negative. You find yourself in the impossible position of watching preventable disasters unfold while being powerless to prevent them because others lack the cognitive tools to understand your analysis. This creates what Schopenhauer identified as the fundamental isolation of the intelligent mind. Intelligence doesn't just make you different from others. It makes you incompatible with the cognitive frameworks that most people use to navigate reality. You think in systems while they think in fragments. You see connections while they see isolated events. You perceive patterns while they experience randomness. These aren't just different perspectives. They're different ways of being conscious. The problem deepens when you realize that your intelligence doesn't just separate you from others intellectually. It separates you emotionally and socially as well. Most human bonding occurs through shared understanding, common perspectives, mutual validation of beliefs and experiences. But when your understanding consistently differs from others, when your perspectives challenge their assumptions, When your insights threaten their comfortable beliefs, the foundation for normal social bonding erodes. Schopenhauer observed that intelligent people often develop what he called the contemplative attitude, a tendency to observe and analyze, rather than simply experience. This capacity for detached observation is crucial for deep understanding, but it creates distance even in intimate relationships. While others are caught up in the immediate emotional experience of events, the intelligent person is simultaneously analyzing the psychological dynamics at play, recognizing the historical patterns being repeated, understanding the logical implications of what's happening. This dual consciousness, experiencing and analyzing simultaneously, prevents the kind of unreflective immersion that characterizes normal emotional connection. The burden extends beyond social relationships to encompass the intelligent person's relationship with themselves. Schopenhauer understood that intelligence brings with it an unavoidable awareness of life's fundamental contradictions, society's persistent irrationalities, and humanity's capacity for self-deception. The smart person cannot maintain the comfortable illusions that make ordinary life bearable. They see too clearly the arbitrary nature of social conventions, the logical flaws in popular beliefs, the gap between human ideals and actual behavior. This clarity becomes particularly painful when applied to personal relationships. The intelligent person can analyze their own psychological patterns, understand the unconscious motivations driving their behavior, recognize the ways their past experiences shape their present reactions. While this self-awareness can be liberating, it also makes spontaneous emotional experience more difficult. It's hard to lose yourself in romantic love when you understand the evolutionary psychology behind attraction. It's difficult to maintain righteous anger when you can see the logical fallacies in your own position. It's challenging to experience simple joy when you're aware of the psychological mechanisms creating that joy. Schopenhauer recognized that this analytical tendency extends to the intelligent person's perception of their own mortality. While most people can distract themselves from thoughts of death through daily activities and social engagement, the intelligent person's mind inevitably returns to fundamental questions about existence, meaning, and mortality. They cannot maintain the psychological denial that allows others to live without constant awareness of life's temporary nature. This philosophical burden, the weight of cosmic awareness, becomes a constant companion. The problem is compounded by society's contradictory attitude toward intelligence. On the surface, intelligence is praised and rewarded. Educational systems claim to foster critical thinking. Employers say they value innovative problem-solving. Social institutions supposedly encourage intellectual development. But in practice, intelligence is welcome only when it operates within acceptable boundaries. Society wants smart people to solve technical problems, not question fundamental assumptions. It values intelligence that serves existing power structures, while fearing intelligence that challenges them. This creates a double bind for intelligent people. If they suppress their natural tendency to analyze and question, they experience the psychological pain of intellectual suffocation. Their minds atrophy from lack of stimulation. Their insights go unexpressed. Their potential remains unrealized. But if they exercise their intelligence fully, they face social rejection, professional limitations, and personal isolation. Either path leads to suffering, the suffering of intellectual death or the suffering of social alienation. Schopenhauer's analysis reveals that the problem with being smart isn't primarily external. It's not just about how others treat intelligent people. The deepest problem is internal. Intelligence fundamentally changes consciousness in ways that make ordinary human experiences more difficult to access. The smart person struggles with simple pleasures because their minds immediately analyze the psychological mechanisms behind pleasure. They find it difficult to maintain faith because their critical faculties automatically examine religious claims for logical consistency. They cannot enjoy popular entertainment because they see through the emotional manipulation techniques being employed. This analytical tendency extends to every aspect of experience. The intelligent person watches a movie and simultaneously analyzes the narrative structure, the character development, the thematic elements, and the directorial choices. They cannot simply lose themselves in the story because their minds are too active, too aware of the artificial construction of the experience. This same pattern applies to social interactions, professional situations, romantic relationships, and personal experiences. The intelligent mind cannot stop analyzing, cannot turn off its pattern recognition systems, cannot cease its constant search for deeper understanding. The philosopher understood that this creates a fundamental loneliness that goes beyond social isolation. It's the loneliness of consciousness itself, the awareness that your inner experience differs qualitatively from that of most others, that your way of processing reality is fundamentally different from the norm, that your mental life operates according to principles that others cannot grasp or appreciate. This isn't the loneliness of being misunderstood, which can be remedied through better communication. This is the loneliness of being constitutionally different, of possessing a type of consciousness that is inherently incompatible with ordinary human experience. Yet Schopenhauer also recognized that this burden comes with compensating gifts. The same analytical capacity that creates distance from ordinary experience also enables profound insights into the nature of reality. The same critical thinking that makes simple faith impossible also protects against dangerous delusions. The same pattern recognition that complicates social interaction also reveals the underlying structures that govern human behavior. Intelligence may be a burden, but it's also humanity's most valuable tool for understanding and transcending the limitations of ordinary consciousness. The key insight is that the problem with being smart cannot be solved by becoming less intelligent or by forcing others to become more intelligent. Neither option is possible or desirable. Instead, the intelligent person must learn to work with their nature rather than against it. They must develop strategies for managing the psychological burden of heightened awareness while maximizing the benefits of their cognitive gifts. This begins with accepting the reality of intellectual difference rather than fighting against it. The intelligent person must acknowledge that their mind works differently from others, that their way of processing information creates both advantages and disadvantages, that their consciousness operates according to principles that may seem alien to those with different cognitive capacities. This acceptance doesn't mean resignation or superiority, it means honest recognition of neurological reality. Schopenhauer advocated for what he called intellectual asceticism, the discipline of using intelligence wisely rather than compulsively. This means learning when to engage analytical thinking and when to suspend it, when to seek deeper understanding and when to accept surface appearances, when to exercise critical faculties and when to allow for simple experience. The intelligent person must develop the metacognitive skill of managing their own mental processes, rather than being controlled by them. This requires cultivating what the philosopher termed aesthetic appreciation, the ability to experience beauty, art, and natural phenomena without immediate analytical interference. The intelligent person must learn to access modes of consciousness that bypass their usual analytical patterns, allowing for direct experiential engagement with reality. This isn't anti-intellectual. It's the highest form of intelligence, the capacity to use analytical thinking when it serves understanding, and to suspend it when it interferes with experience. The practical application involves developing emotional regulation skills, specifically designed for intelligent minds. This means recognizing that frustration with others' cognitive limitations is a natural response, but not a useful one. That anger at society's irrationality is understandable, but ultimately unproductive. That disappointment with human behavior is inevitable, but doesn't have to be debilitating. The intelligent person must learn to observe these emotional reactions with the same analytical clarity they apply to external phenomena, understanding their psychological origins without being controlled by them. Another crucial skill is learning to communicate complex ideas in accessible ways without condescending to others or oversimplifying important concepts. This requires understanding that most people process information differently, that what seems obvious to an intelligent mind may require extensive explanation for others, that resistance to new ideas often reflects cognitive limitations rather than moral failings. The intelligent person must become a translator between different levels of understanding, building bridges rather than highlighting gaps. Schopenhauer emphasized the importance of finding intellectual companions, others, who share similar cognitive capacities and can engage with complex ideas without requiring extensive explanation. These relationships provide relief from the constant burden of translation, allowing for authentic intellectual exchange and mutual understanding. Such companions are rare, but their friendship becomes essential for psychological health and continued intellectual development. The philosopher also stressed the value of solitary contemplation as a source of meaning and satisfaction. The intelligent person must learn to derive fulfillment from the process of understanding itself, rather than from external validation of their insights. They must develop what he called the joy of thinking, appreciation for intellectual activity as an end in itself rather than merely a means to social or professional success. This involves cultivating patience with the slow pace of cultural change and social progress. The intelligent person often sees solutions to problems decades before others recognize the problems exist. They must learn to think in historical timescales, understanding that ideas often require generations to be accepted and implemented. This perspective helps reduce frustration with immediate incomprehension while maintaining hope for eventual understanding. The burden of intelligence also requires developing philosophical equanimity about human nature itself. Schopenhauer taught that most human behavior is driven by unconscious forces, the will to live, evolutionary instincts, psychological needs, rather than rational deliberation. Understanding these forces helps the intelligent person develop compassion for others' limitations rather than contempt for their failings. This doesn't mean lowering standards or abandoning principles, but rather maintaining realistic expectations about human behavior and social change. Most importantly, the intelligent person must learn to find meaning in their unique perspective rather than lamenting its isolation. Their ability to see what others miss, to understand what others find confusing, to solve problems others cannot even perceive. These capacities represent genuine contributions to human understanding and progress. Every scientific breakthrough, every philosophical insight, every creative innovation begins with someone seeing what others overlook. The intelligent person serves as humanity's advanced scout, exploring intellectual territories that others will eventually inhabit. The problem with being smart isn't really a problem to be solved. It's a condition to be understood and managed wisely. Like any powerful tool, intelligence can be used destructively or constructively, can become a source of suffering or a path to transcendence. The choice lies not in whether to be intelligent, that's determined by neurology and development, but in how to live intelligently, how to use cognitive gifts in service of both personal fulfillment and human progress. And Schopenhauer's final insight was that the highest form of intelligence is the wisdom to accept both the gifts and burdens that come with heightened awareness. The truly intelligent person doesn't seek to escape their nature or force others to match their capacity. Instead, they learn to live authentically within their cognitive reality while maintaining compassion for those who experience consciousness differently. They use their intelligence not as a weapon against others' limitations, but as a light to illuminate paths that others might eventually follow. In the comments, share how your intelligence has created both opportunities and challenges in your life, and what strategies you've developed for managing the burden of heightened awareness. Let's build a community of minds that understand both the gift and the curse of seeing clearly. Remember, as Schopenhauer taught, the problem with being smart isn't your intelligence. It's learning to live wisely with the consciousness that intelligence creates. Your analytical mind is both your greatest asset and your heaviest burden, but it's also your unique contribution to human understanding. The world needs people who can see clearly, think deeply, and maintain hope despite their awareness of human limitations. Embrace your cognitive gifts while developing the wisdom to use them compassionately and effectively.